Hi. We're back again. Let's see if anybody shows up. Maybe someone will show. So I found Carmen. I went to get my iron IV today. Hi. And I was worried that I couldn't find her. And then I came home, and after I posted that she was lost, I came home and I did a quick scan. Hang on a minute. I did a quick scan of the apartment, and I actually found her. She was in the middle of the floor under the table. It's not where she was before. She's been hiding for like 5 days, but I'm just about to put her back down. I don't know how long she feels like being held. I put you down. Well, you can go where you want. Anyway, this is Carmen. He's my bearded dragon. Our bearded dragon. We love her. Hi, everybody. So I started to talk about group dynamics earlier, and then I realized afterward that I forgot like half the information. So I guess it's a two-parter because first of all, I should say that I don't think, how would I know? I never know what's actually going to come through. But I definitely felt something coming through tonight. And I know that I talked to Sarah Adams. We had a conversation. I started to do this live stream yesterday. I was about to. And then I wound up getting kind of diverted. And then Sarah Adams and I did, hey, get out of the garbage. Sarah Adams. And I wound up having conversation. So that was like the live for yesterday. I am high vibration today. I hope I actually am. That's true. But a lot of things came through in that conversation that we didn't intend. Like it didn't go the way we thought. And I know I say this every time, but every time I start these things, and it's really much more about the energetic transmission for the people who happen to show up, who happen to listen to that one. Like every time I think, well, I know what body of information I'm going to deliver, I'll start to do that, and it just veers, and something else happens, and that really seems to be much more the norm than anything I plan. So I think this is just a little bit about. I'm just gonna start talking and see what comes through. If any of you have particular conversations, this could be a question and answer. And if I need to go get another animal, I will. I feel you getting restless. Are you getting restless? I'll put you down if you need to get down. There's so much information that wants to come through, and I feel like that there are some, it's so strange the way this happens. I can feel energy, and I can feel topics of conversation kind of coalescing. You ever made cheese? You know how curds form in cheese, or they form in milk? And then when it's all curdled up, you cut it and you get all the way out. There are like solidifications in the energy that happens behind me. It's kind of like bodies of information on a topic begin to kind of coalesce, and the one that comes forward is whatever is meant for, like it feels like the people in the group, or the majority of people in the group, whichever one pops in to come through me, but I can feel the potentials. Like I can feel them forming. I have known for a while that I don't feel like it's night. I have known for a while that at some point we're going to be talking about pregnancy, miscarriage, and parent-child separation. Like there's something in there about loss of children and various things that can contribute to a miscarriage, or I don't think that that's this group, but I think what I'm going to wind up doing, I'm surprised that it's even coming through at all. But I think I'm going to wind up, I always say this though, setting a time to talk about that specifically so that the right people can arrive for that, to have that topic delivered, because there's definitely information and there's a vibrational emollient. There's a soothing quality that wants to come through along with specific information that's going to it's going to soothe people or alleviate. I don't know. There's a couple of things in there about why miscarriages can occur. It's for a variety of reasons. And I know that there's at least one piece of information in there that seems harsh, but I know it's coming. It's not going to apply to most people. It just applies to one person, but I think that they're going to hear that. And anyway, the information today, we're talking about group dynamics. And I know that I feel like it's going to be, I don't feel like today's going to be a really long one. I feel like it's going to be a short one. I could be wrong. I was really wrong yesterday. I thought we were going to be on for like 40 minutes and we were 3 hours and 20 minutes. The information today has to do with the dynamics of groups. And I also know that at some point we need to talk about templates, the way templates work. I think I'm going to put you down. Can I put you down? Or do you need, what should I do with you? I feel like something's missing. Something's missing. I'm not sure. I'm going to put you down on the floor so I can talk. Isn't she nice though? She's the best lizard. I love you extra. Don't run too far. Last time I found the snake under the stove. My snake got loose last time. Okay. So the way templates work, is this the way I'm going to say? Wait a minute. Group dynamics. Boy, I feel unprepared. I was more prepared earlier and now it's late. Hang on a second. I feel as though all right, this is just something different that's coming in. You're never in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're always in the right place at the right time. Every being is a combination of energies in percentages. And before we incarnate, it's like we can take a certain quantity of qualities down with us. Let's say it's a little bit like carry-on luggage where you can only carry so much. So let's say, for example, that just because I have to put it into some kind of a linear context, I'll say that you can come down with 100 strands of light. That's far less than you can carry. And there's also, you can divide things up. But I'm just using it as an example. Let's say that you can come down with 100 strands of light, but you can choose those strands from any number of different templates according to the qualities, the qualities and what you're going to need to have for that lifetime. During the JOAN lifetime, we established, the group of us, designed in advance a template. There was a new template that was introduced by Joan of Arc, the person, the being, designed to be as contagious as possible. And I know I'm not going to deliver all of this information right now. I'm just setting a little bit of a framework, because at some point I will deliver all the information, and it's going to be more thorough. But for the time being, there were certain things that, in order to get the populations through the ascension window from a place of extreme density, there were certain qualities that had to be injected into the population and saturated into collective consciousness. It was absolutely essential, because you could not make the 11 gateway that requires equality and empathy. You couldn't get that the way the population was headed. The way the population was headed was grossly imbalanced, really boneheaded, stupid. It was hyper masculine and extremely dense. So it was basically all war all the time. It was like one channel. And nobody was going to get out because it was too imbalanced. Because you have to reach a place of balance with the individual, and then I've said this before, and then you learn via the twin flame dynamic, you learn to have that with one other person, somebody outside of you that you love or have the experience of being another aspect of you. That's your introduction to loving others as yourself, knowing others as yourself, like for real. You have to be able to keep that balanced with another person so that all your crap comes to the surface. But in order to reach equality, we had to get certain things jump-started in the population at large, because it really was not going well at all. And it was poisoning the earth. Also, you had, if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, you're going to want to know certain things about it. At some point, I feel like when I wind up putting this into some sort of a curriculum, PowerPoint presentation, something, we're going to wind up touching on probably some key aspects so that it's organized and codified and you can follow it, because there needs to be like a presentation. I envision it to be something like the way David Icke does it. That needs to happen, but that's not what you're getting tonight. Tonight you're getting a little taste of it. The whole Joan of Arc story happened in, of course, it was France, right? In the Middle Ages. But the context of that, you have to take into consideration where it is on the earth, the amount of strife that was already there, the hub, the what's the word? It's like a ganglion. It's like a ganglion of ley lines. So that when conflict was so saturated right there, it sent it out. It just went through the ley lines and it just corrupted freaking everything. So we were trying to turn that around. And in trying to turn it around, we made an energetic construct, as I've said before, and we made alliances, knowing that each side because you have to meet your population where they are, right? And they're in a time of hyper polarity and hyper density. So in order to free the population, which is now you or us now, we said we were going to go down as a team. So we assembled a team of people, ET beings, with certain qualities. We assembled a task force. It was a little bit like the Hall of Justice, a little bit. Like you've got all these beings and they carry qualities. You don't need a lot of skill set overlap, but you do need individual beings with specialty qualities. Like you don't need two Aquamen. You can have one person knows how to go underwater, and as long as everybody's sharing their skill set, having one person who has it is enough. If you don't share, you're stewed. But basically, we came down with it as a group of ET beings in a specialty skill set in an energetic construct that afforded us a number of things. We designed the energetic construct. This has never been said before. We designed the energetic construct. It has never, it's unprecedented. It's only ever happened once. We invented it we started using it in the David lifetime. Then we used it again in the Esther lifetime, Queen Esther, in the triad. They rotate and whatever. You got the same group of people though. Came down in David lifetime, King David. Came down in the Queen Esther lifetime. I'm referring to it as the Queen Esther lifetime because that was the part that I participated in. And I'm the one who's talking. And I'm supposed to be the mouthpiece for a reason. Our speech was shut down. The population, the jurisdiction of the population that I carry, or I have been aligned with, are the ones who have had no speech. So as part of or they have been, their freedom of expression has been severely repressed. So in order to bring us back to 0 point, we created a being, the Joan of Arc persona, to be kind of a child star that was with that was on top of the David persona, and then Queen Esther, and then Joan of Arc, that we were like trying to get as much of this particular quality of energy into the group Merkaba, but then it gets divided. And each of us in the construct has a jurisdiction, even though overall we are all responsible for the entirety of and the success of the thing. Each one of us has kind of primary responsibility for a certain jurisdiction of the population. I take children. Once they hit puberty, they go through a vibrational change and they usually go to Carmen or Josh, depending. But then there are also subsets of the population, like Zoya has a group of people, and Sarah had a group of people too. But it's also, we work together. Like nobody is left in each position. There's a pair of two of us, and you can be on more than one task at a time. Like we're stationed in pairs though. There's at least 2 people responsible for each jurisdiction, so that no person has to do it alone. And it's also meant to install balance and a divine partnership vibration throughout the entire thing, so that at no point is one person to carry it, any specific job. Nonetheless, in the primary triad, I carry the divine children population, and they have been my responsibility to rear. But having said that, they're all connected, right? And it's very much like soup. It's in fact, that's the best analogy. It works just like soup. Whenever you join a group, and this is going to matter for all of you. I'm talking about, I'm using ours as an example, but that's only because it's the template. The new template is one of group. So the Joan of Arc persona template is being retired, but the new group template is going to be what everyone is using for as you step up into 5, the 5th dimension. So it's important to understand how groups work, that you really don't have the same kind of mental boundaries that you had. You don't have the luxury really of thinking of yourself solely as an individual anymore, because everything you do is going to go through the entire population. So the construct did a number of things. We made alliances with different beings that we were challenged. So first of all, it's important to say we were challenging ourselves as well. This has never been done before. This thing with the construct has never been done before. It's a little bit of a Hail Mary. We didn't know how it was going to work. We saw the kids in trouble. We were trying to figure out how we could address and how we could get it out under the circumstances. And it was really sorely fucked up. Like, you can't just, you know that if you go down there as an individual, it's going to kill you. So, but whatever. There were all sorts of problems involved in getting down there to begin with. So there was an enormous amount of figuring things out. Lots of meetings and people weighing in and panels and just trying to figure out circuitry. Like, how exactly is this going to work? So the way we figured it would work, and that's why there were so many Arcturians too, because we do a lot with circuitry. We function in a group. We're very group oriented to begin with. But we've used, I mean, we've taken counsel in designing it. We took counsel from really a lot of beings. We made the decision ourselves, but there were a lot of experts that were called in to take a look, to give their best estimate, their best educated guess as to how they thought we could work it. By no means was this a sure thing. And it flopped badly. Like the Joan of Arc lifetime, I don't consider that a success at all, not just because they killed me. It was just, we were trying to do something else. We were trying to aim for something far grander. Grander is the wrong word. We were trying to aim for, anyway, it was a partial success. We got the template installed. That part was a success. My guides told me in this lifetime that my job in that lifetime was to go down and turn on the garden hose and leave it running. We had to establish a pattern, introduce a pattern that would be, and also introduce a system that would get it to get picked up by as many people as possible. It had to be as extremely contagious as possible, so that the maximum number of incoming souls would be affected by it one way or another. Either their vibration was low and inert enough that they would feel the dominant tuning fork, the larger vibration, and train to it in that lifetime, or they would be born into bodies, reincarnate as beings who picked up portions of the pattern themselves to carry it through. And that's really, that part has worked very well. In introducing the template, we were trying to get certain qualities introduced and dramatically affecting the group consciousness of the planet. Like, that's really where all of the power comes from, infiltrating mass consciousness. So I know in the disclosure community, there's a lot of negative ideas about, or you listen to the way they say things, like the Illuminati, they're just laughing at us and they're hiding things in plain sight. Yeah, we do laugh at you sometimes, because there's another side to this. And it's interesting to me that people who focus on the negative things that are happening so much fail to recognize, when they do that they're focusing on only the negative things. And you cannot just think about it. You cannot pull on just one side of a rubber band. I guarantee you, if you never hear another word I say, hear this part. If something is extremely dark, and it's true, like, I'm not arguing that and saying that there's no Illuminati, or humanity hasn't been imprisoned, and there's no pedophilia in Hollywood, and there's no pedophilia in the church, etc. Of course that is. That's absolutely true. Nobody's arguing that. I'm not. But when you you have to be able to see the facts, acknowledge that, yes, those facts have actually happened. But if you continually focus on it, you're going to get more of it. You're going to start to recreate it. So I know that my role now, remember I said that a while ago that David Wilcock's information precedes mine, and that mine is the second half? That's true. If you continually focus on the dark side, those aspects, as important as it was, because the first half of the task is absolutely 100% to uncover all the shit. You absolutely have to have that purge. So all of that darkness has to be revealed, but then you also have to handle it the right way. So that doesn't mean we're going to ignore it, because of course we're not. However, there is a tipping point, and we're basically at it now, where en masse, we really have yet to step fully into our own power, where the bulk of the people recognize how they need to control their own thinking in order to get this thing to go in another direction. Because if you continually look back at the pedophilia, like if somebody mentions the church and you're so upset about the pedophilia and how you've been, like you thought it was a good thing and you were following Jesus, you thought you were doing all the right things, and then it turns out they're raping children, and now it turns out they're bad. You're still in duality if you're having these thoughts of, if you're keeping your thoughts in duality, then you're recreating duality. And if you want to get out of duality, one thing you have to do is be at peace. Find a way to be at peace. You don't have to love it, and we are never going back there. We're never going back there. We're not going back in prison, and it's okay to hold your ground and say, no, I'm never going to do this. but we're in weird terrain right now, because it has to be a choice, right? If there's a law that says you must never do this, it's not allowed, that free choice is taken from you. So there's more spiritual mastery when you can look at and accept that you have a choice, and then you make the choice for light from a place of peace, where you're actually choosing of your own volition rather than being steered. So previously, there's been a tremendous amount of war. There was like, as above, so below, right? I'm not explaining this very well, but I'll try to get back to it. I know I switched topics a couple of times. The 100 Years' War, that was 80 years. They were 80 years into the 100 Years' War when Joan of Arc showed up. As above, so below. The war was already going on way bigger, way stronger, for the planet, the war for the planet. It's planetary warfare. It's like the wars that happen, and I'm not trying to make light of them, and I'm not making light of the genocides, or any of the conflict that has taken place in the earth or on the earth for countries. And it feels very major when you're down there, but really it's only the part of the larger war that has landed. The larger war is really for consciousness, and that is something that has been going on, like, behind the scenes. Like, that's why I think when the information about the Illuminati comes out, about how they've been, they've been manipulating consciousness, and they put hidden symbols in the Grammy Awards, and all of this stuff that you hear, which is true. I'm not saying it's not true. It is. It's absolutely true. But what you need to focus on, and the delicious thing that I'm going to wind up disclosing that I'm so excited for, it's going to help a lot of people. We're all going to be really happy when we're reminded of this fact. If the Illuminati, you think about it, if the Illuminati and the Cabal have done all of these dark things, do you think that they're the only ones who have been steering your consciousness? You think just the Illuminati? I mean, is it true? Absolutely. In fact, where am I? Some point I'll show you my headphones. I wear headphones, and I always have for decades now. My kids will tell you. I have headphones that were made for the target range, and they cover my ears completely. And sometimes I also have earplugs because I can hear through them sometimes. And I wear these things every single time, bar none. I keep them in my purse. And every time I go out, any public area that plays music, and which is why I always have them in my bag, I wear these purple headphones. And it's because they do try to infiltrate your consciousness. Absolutely, they do. I don't think we need to enumerate all of the ways that the population have been assaulted, from the chemtrails and the smart meters and television and incessant music that's not of our choice, but is absolutely programming us. Absolutely. So I never go out without my headphones, because I will not have that in my head. And I really do think it's cruelty for those every single time I go to the grocery store. This is a little bit off track. Every time I go to the grocery store, while I put my headphones on, but I can still, every once in a while, I can still hear I know that their soundtrack hasn't changed in the 6 years I've been shopping at this grocery store. And they always play, it's like, what's love got to do with it? And things like that. I don't want that message going into my head. And I really do feel for the employees who have to listen to that all the time. It's not healthy. At any rate, but the point that I would like to make, though, is that if the Illuminati and the cabal have been doing that, and they actually have, it's true, and there's fluoride in the water, so, and the food supply is poisoned, etc. So the way to get out of that situation, it's the thing that you always have to break first is the belief barrier. You have to break that. The hardest thing to infiltrate, and the reason that the cabal and the Illuminati and the reptilians, and the reason that the war for this planet is it's all for collective consciousness. Whoever steers the thoughts of the masses, the sleeping masses. Like, ultimately, my goal is to get the population free and give everybody back their own power. To that aim, I was on the Council of Balance, and have we in the fourth dimension, even though the Council of Balance was in 12, we went down into 4 and did a lot of work manipulating, steering the population. My point is that there's a tremendous amount of steering that is happening equally. That's the thing that I would like you to focus on, is that if the cabal is doing this, and they are, what must that mean? And that's the question that you really need to ask all the time. Every time you're in a place, and I do tell you this from personal experience, because it's not like I haven't seen the dark end of the stick. Holy crap. The way out, and I'm really going to, I might even talk about it tonight. There is a way out of the density and the darkness. Sarah Adams and I started to just touch on it a teeny little bit last night. There are places, situations that can happen, that do happen, that are so dark and so dense and so pervasive and so seemingly insurmountable. Where you know that no escape is going to come from any lateral move. That's really the lesson of the third dimension. There comes a point in the third dimension where, because the third dimension is very deceptive, it tricks you into believing that, number one, it's a system that will work if only you do it right. That's a big fat fucking lie. That's not true. It's simply a trap. It's a very it's a seductive trap. It's very deceptive. It gives you, I don't know why I use this analogy when I've never been to a casino, but it's a little bit like something that's just going to give you enough to keep you trying, but ultimately it will fail. And there's only so far you can take it. And there are certain circumstances in the third dimension designed to wake you up so that you realize that there is no solution for you in this realm. Not at all. It will keep you playing it for a long time before you realize that. You'll be told to go to one agency, and it's like, kind of like, how you know this, if you're listening to me, I think you already know this, that, the healthcare system is designed to make money, and it's all linked in with the poison food supply, and the banking system is corrupt, everything is corrupted, but it's a Mobius strip that is intertwined with all of the other institutions. It's designed to keep you in it. So as dark as that is, and there are places like the if you take a situation, they're telling me to use this as an example again. I'm supposed to talk about the Joan of Arc lifetime because sorry. I'm hitting some of my own resistance. Hang on. They want me to talk about it because I don't want to talk about it. I didn't think we were going to talk about this at all. I thought I was going to talk about group dynamics. This may run longer than I thought. There are times when it is possible to be in a situation that is so dark and so inescapable that nothing is coming to save you. Nothing is, there is basically no escape. Most of my trauma from the Joan of Arc lifetime had to do with a lot of things, but I had healed a lot of that, a great deal of that. And I've been working my entire life recovering from that lifetime. And at some point I'll probably talk more about it, but oddly enough, the majority of my unhealed trauma, the thing that I had dreams about from the time I was an infant, I remember dreaming about this when I was 2 or younger, like in the crib. There was a point in the Joan of Arc lifetime when they weren't making any progress with me in the public courtroom. I was actually holding up very well in public. And that was because I was connected to the crowd, and I could still do things with energy where I could keep myself alive, and I had a rapport with the crowd, even though they weren't French. I could do things energetically. When they isolated me, there was a point that they isolated me and put me in, as basically solitary confinement in a cell. And they also moved me around a lot, but there were the majority of my trauma, the things that I couldn't get over, had to do with that. We were talking about how to escape from something that you can't escape from. The reason I'm here to deliver this information is because it really is a way of escaping. There's an actual way of escaping a situation that has no escape. There was a time when I knew that I was going to be killed. I knew that I was going to be tortured. I knew that the legal system was not going to work for me. I knew that the church was no longer working for me. The government was no longer working for me. My family was gone or isolated. They couldn't reach me. There was also a point There was a point, normally I'm very optimistic and have a very strong connection to guides all the time, all the time. And those of us who function from this realm where we're never disconnected, we're always connected, we live connected. There was a point where I had been chained to a log. I had jumped out of a window about 65 feet high. And I'll tell that story a different day, along with another story that goes with it. But they put me back in the tower. And in order for me not to escape again, to make sure that I couldn't escape at all, I had an iron collar around my neck. I was chained to a log. And there was a point that the sheer physical pain or the anguish of being in that situation became so extreme that I couldn't even hear my guides anymore. And that was horrendous. That's the true separation, where you really feel. I knew that I wasn't separate from God. I knew that intellectually, having had that connection always. But I felt abandoned by them, even though I knew I wasn't. I was waiting for them to come back. I was in a situation where I was constantly just waiting. Are they here? Are they here? Are they here? And they never were. And it's because you do have to be in a certain state of receptivity. And when you're in a state of constant clench and constant pinch and being tortured, it becomes harder and harder to be receptive and relaxed. So I could no longer hear my guides either. I'll get back to the energetic construct in a minute. There has been a war for the consciousness, the collective consciousness of this planet. I would ask you to pay very close attention to your own thinking, as though you're driving a car with your mind, and your emotions are the gas. The momentum is going to come from where you put your emotional intensity. Where the car is headed is going to come from what you're thinking about. So that's the steering wheel of your car. It really does work this way. So if you're in a situation where it seems like it's inescapable, like what can you do about the cabal? I'm just one person. What can I do about the cabal? Well, one thing you can do is drive your own car, and you can see that. You can see all the darkness, but the way out is to focus on the light side of it and ask yourself, what must that mean? If something is this dark, what must that mean? It must mean that there's an opposite somewhere. So you need to find where that opposite is and point your thoughts in that direction and feel as strongly as possible in that direction, because that's what's going to take your vehicle in the appropriate direction, and it's going to lift up your vibration. So there has been, within the energetic construct, then I'll get back to why I was crying. In the energetic construct, we made alliances or we had to come down in a time of, because it was such a time of extreme duality, we had to come down in a form that met the population where it was. So part of that had to be extremely dark as well, and part of it had to be extremely light. So we built this construct that had all of these beings in it, and we had the idea that what was going to happen, the overriding goal was to dramatically accelerate the population's growth, the spiritual growth of the population. And we know that we know that they have to make their own choice, right? That's the whole point of getting them up to kind of spiritual snuff, to get them a certain level of spiritual maturity out of them. They need to be able to responsibly make a choice for themselves. Like, you're not going to take free choice away from them. You sometimes are in the lower levels to the sleeping ones. We are allowed to steer the sleeping ones, and it's appropriate to steer the sleepers. Until they wake up, they can't decide. If you're a sleeping person, the closest you can get to choice when you're asleep is to just like vibrational drift. It's like vibrational drift. So I am telling you, your choices of listening material and entertainment, not benign, man, not inconsequential. Anything you put into your mind, anything you allow yourself to see, is going to accumulate. It all accrues on a vibrational level. So really, don't be mindless. I almost said stupid. Most people are not dumb. They're just really on autopilot, and they don't think. We are conditioned in this reality. We have been conditioned to think that leaving a television on the background is benign, or it's not going to affect you, or it's safe to sleep with like the radio on or television, or you're really going to want to know what you're putting into your open mind. Because if you don't take control over it, oh, I guarantee you somebody else will. So the Illuminati and the Cabal and the darker forces, the Archons, not all of the Archons are bad either. A lot of us are on that same strata, and we're doing everything imaginable to put the right information, or the right information. That's my own agenda. We are putting positive information. We're doing the counteracting of whatever they're doing. We're doing something opposite. And I guarantee you we are working night and day and just as hard to steer everyone in the opposite direction, to give them back their choice, to tell them exactly what we're doing. And we're hiding stuff in plain sight too. But even the idea of hiding stuff in plain sight, that's another one of those phrases that gets tossed around in the disclosure community. And the way it's usually said, it's looked at as though that's something bad. But even that phrase, hidden in plain sight, even that is divided in half. So if you're thinking, oh, they hid it in plain sight because they're trying to hide, then they're laughing at us. And they're giving us information, and, they're secretive and they don't want us to find it, and they're laughing at us. That's true sometimes. And we're also shaking our head like, how can they not, how is it possible that they have missed this thing where we put it here and here and here and here and here? We put it everywhere. We put it in the freaking Grammys. Not everything is working against you. You really need to be careful what you're feeding with your own energy. I mean, really. Focus on what's good about that. Hidden in plain sight. You could focus on the fact that there's information all around you and there's absolutely no place that you could miss it unless you're missing it. If you're not seeing it, what does that tell you? It tells you you need to open your mind and start to look, because it's in plain sight. It's everywhere. And all you have to do is ask, and it's given. I mean, we're given this stuff all the time. We put it in everywhere. We put it everywhere. There's a, okay, let me get back to the energetic construct for a second. The energetic construct did certain things. Number one, we made it so that it was, number one, it contained us. So one of the things I will tell you is that we're not getting out until our populations do. We attached ourselves. It was a gift of love, I'm telling you. We attached ourselves to our population. And as each person wakes up, do you need to stay attached? No. We're attached to the population of sleepers that gave us their power. And by virtue of vibrational leaning, by virtue of vibrational drift, the sleeping population will gravitate toward one of the people in the construct that that has been a collector person. People who give away their, I'm not explaining this very well, but there are other beings that do this too. To the best of my understanding, we're the only ones who came down in this particular construct. But like if you're a sleepy person, and if you're one of the sleepers and you actively give your power away to, say, a celebrity, your energy is being pulled by them, unless you wake up and you say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And you deliberately cut the cord and you take all of your decision making back, which personally, I encourage that, really do. But in the energetic construct, we were all in there, and we all made an agreement that we were going to stay in this construct, even though you can take it apart between lifetimes. But during the lifetimes that we use it, we stay in there, and we're kind of advocates, or we're custodians of our specific group, our jurisdiction of people. So I've got like the children, they all come to me first. Star children, I've also got the I want to call them like the slaves of the system. I've got the populations who have been given the least power, the very empathetic ones. So there are certain things that we did on purpose. And when you understand what we were trying to do when we installed the template, there were certain populations that, remember I said that there were sometimes, each individual is a combination of frequencies, but there were certain frequencies that were horribly depleted in certain groups. They had too much. There was such an imbalance that, like, for example, the men had all of the power and all of the speaking ability, and they got really bloated and really huge, and they're going to have to learn certain things. They're going to have to get a lot of empathy. They're going to have to learn to share. They're going to have to learn to function in ways where it's not domineering and forceful. The women we had to get certain frequencies imparted into specific groups that didn't have them. So each person brought in deliberately specific qualities, and that would be picked up by the group that needed them. For example, the group that I had been carrying was hugely sensitive and came basically from remember, you know, the triangle pointing down, like the star beings, who we have a totally different sensibility. In order for that population, who is so empathic and so boundaryless, they had no boundaries, because there we don't have them. When we're coming from all the way up there, that kind of boundary system, just, it's a whole different system. We don't have it. So that population, in order to get a, they needed certain qualities that would come from, say, a narcissist. Like Joan of Arc had to have the person had to have specific qualities that we placed there intentionally in order to have her be able to ignore the opinions of every last person. It had to be something that was so single-minded, where the job was so specific that no matter who says, you can't do that, we don't approve of that, this person will not be swayed. It has to be something, it had to be an energetic, anchoring. There just had to be an energetic, I don't know, I don't have a word for it, but it feels very much like a tractor beam when you're in it. Very much like a tractor beam. Like you're only going to do the one thing. And it's like being on like a cosmic water pick that's also a water slide. There's only one direction, and there are energetic, I want to say walls. It is a boundary, that are really like when I was in it, it was really protecting me from being affected by the desires of other people. It was extremely important to the success of my mission that I not be swayed just because people I loved wanted me to do something different. It was really important to get that kind of sovereignty into the population. So the way we do that is I will pick it up and carry a tremendous quantity of this vibration in a very strong vibrational field. And then by placing me in the public eye, you can gravitate. Also, I came in with that history already. So it was a vibrational beacon. And when other people, the population, looks at you, since they don't know the way energetics work, you just become an accumulator. So fortunately for my population, I have every intention of giving their energy back. All they have to do is ask for it. I'm even telling you how to do it. And my whole job is to pull up, pull. And because my own drive to go up is so incredibly strong, there's no way I'm not going to do it. I act as a tugboat, and I lift the population that is the sleepers. They wake up faster when they're connected to my energy, as I'm always trying to wake them up. One of the things we installed a rotational mechanism in the construct. So Josh was in the middle. He was Charles the Sixth. He was Charles the Beloved, then he was Charles the Mad. Same person. Once he went crazy, they called him Charles the Mad. But he really wasn't mad. He just bounced out of his body. And then his wife at the time was Isabeau of Bavaria. And we were all, the three of us were in this energetic construct that rotates, where basically it was the king, he was the anchoring force because he generally anchors into the physical, but he had the ability to connect to the higher dimensions as well. And then the two of us, there's a rotation. The energetic construct, it rotates, it spins, and it's a little bit. It's not really like centrifugal force, but it's a teeny bit like that, where the people who gave the attention to the emblem, Joan of Arc, their energy, it feeds one side and or the other, depending on where they lean. So then there it becomes a real war. There's a real war going on, unbeknownst to the people. So this is right now, as I'm disclosing this stuff, we're in the period of time where everybody's getting their power back. If I'm doing anything right, we're giving it all back, and and people are taking it back, which is even better. There's going to come a point when all of the disclosure comes out. I'm so looking forward to it. It's going to be very, very uplifting, because it's going to teach you. When you learn it, you're going to, it's a little bit like mental training, so that you know the way to navigate yourself in the future, so that I won't have to be the one who's the tugboat, because you'll have these skills available, which I promise you they have not taught you in schools. And the future educational system, I hope very strongly that they will be taught in schools, because there's just a certain skill set that everyone's going to need. And the vast majority of the population doesn't do this. It's important. So in the construct, one of the ways we hoped it would work, it was supposed to work on a number of different levels. One of the ways we hoped it would work, and we tried, we'll see, well, I don't know, it's never been done before. We were hoping that it would increase empathy. We were hoping that by speeding up the rotation, it would do the job of, it would help the population get experience faster. That was really the goal, because like the whole purpose of incarnating all the time is that your soul, over a really long time, it experiences a variety of points of view. It experiences the dark, it experiences the light, it eventually gets a certain amount of experience, so that each soul can choose what they want. They get a little bit of spiritual savvy for themselves, and like, oh yeah, I've been through this before, I guess I won't, kill this person, I guess I will, whatever. They get, you want them to get wiser, so that you don't have to go down with a commandment and say, no, killing's wrong, don't kill your brother, and no stealing. Hi. There. Now she's all barked. We're set. Hang on a second. You can go in my room if you want. I'd rather you didn't. So you want it, the hope is that, okay, I should say it this way. In the energetic construct, with all of us placed at specific points, it functions a little bit like a large round table. And each of the beings that, oh, sorry, is this not plugged in? Hang on. Okay. Okay. It said low battery for a second. It functions a little bit like a large round table, and each of the beings that sits at the table, as soon as you're part of the circuit, this is how it's going to affect you too, because this is absolutely true of everyone who joins a circuit. You need to know the way this works. This is also the new template. When you join into a group on an energetic level, your energy or all of your qualities. Remember I said you were like, if you're composed of say 100 strands that represent different ingredients that make up you. You're bringing yourself to the table as a complete set of ingredients. And the whole idea when you join this thing is that you don't pick and choose what you add. I mean, sometimes you do. Sometimes you could say, well, this is basically mine. I have, I used the knowledge of Shakespeare earlier when I was talking, like if Patrick Stewart is in your soul group, I don't have to learn Shakespeare because he knows so much about it. If I have need for knowledge of Shakespeare, I could, once the circuit is fully functional, I could just, as soon as I have need for that information, it comes to me immediately from the person who has it. So that's pretty cool. And the nice thing about that is that everybody gets to study just the things they love. They get to do what they love all the time. You just study what you're passionate about and you accrue a body of knowledge that is all yours and you're very, very interested in. You waste less time. You wind up you're not really wasting time on things that other people think you should learn. And whoever wants to, study accounting, if they want to do that, they can go do that. And thank God, because I don't want to do it. But whoever knows about that will offer their skills to me and vice versa. But the thing is, when you show up at the table, you bring yourself and everything that you are. You don't show up at the table and say, okay, well, I think I'm just going to offer 15 of my 100 strands and I'll tell you this no. You bring the entirety of you. So that's why a lot of our dark aspects really have to be gone. Because everything you bring to the table is suddenly, all of a sudden, is collective. So if I have, let's say I have a real problem with jealousy. Let's say that's the thing I always do, and I have this problem where I just have a chunk of jealousy that I try to hide it, let's say in the third dimension, because this is the only place where you can really get away with it. Let's say in the third dimension, somebody is very jealous. If you go into a circuit or a group where everyone's energy is connected, if you have that reaction, a very jealous reaction, or if you retaliate, let's choose that as an example. If somebody does something to you and instead of forgiving or transmuting it or responding appropriately, you decide that you're going to retaliate. Or even if you have, even if it's not a decision, it's just like a rapid response. If you put that into the field, it's picked up. It goes around and it's going to be picked up by all the other people. So you hope that the other people in your group are good at transmuting. And that's why when we go up into these groups, we're all getting this certain amount of experience now where we're learning how to manage our own emotions without getting too hasty or having negative responses. We're learning to respond to people from a place that is less reactionary, or at least that's what we're trying to learn. Because so that you don't have that when you go up into the fifth dimension and you have instant manifestation. Because if you think about, if you have a retaliatory reaction, if somebody hurts your feelings, for example, and suddenly you're mad at them. And so you do something, even just in anger, you do something, but now it's, if you're in a circuit, it's going to go around to that person and that person and that person and that person. And suddenly it's at least over half the people need to be able to really be good at transmuting and being and restabilizing and clearing automatically all the negative shit that potentially can crop up. That's what this training is for. There's a period, there's like this waiting time, like a holding tank. So you're at a 3. Most of us are out of 3 at this point. If you're listening to my words now, you're probably not anchored in 3, although you still may be living in that lifestyle. But none of us are, I shouldn't say none. For the most part, 3 has been, we're not really anchored to it anymore. And if you're listening to these words, you're probably in the ascension, is on the ascension path. And there's a bit of a margin of time now where we're all kind of really finessing the balance, because it has to be perfect before, we all have to be really balanced before we go through the Ascension Gateway. So one of the things that we had hoped that the construct was going to do in that lifetime, and it's still running, and it's being dismantled now, but we're still in it until it's finally taken apart. It's still operational, but not for very long. We had hoped that by going into a construct and each person being connected energetically to a very large population of sleeping people who needed to get spiritually savvy real fast. They needed as much accelerated growth. Like, if you don't want to do this, also, this isn't something that you want to do. It's like if you have a baby, you don't want them to grow up as quickly as possible and get, you don't want to force your child to be a little adult by the time they're 5. That's never what you want. But we were in a situation where you had like a population full of 30-year-olds who were still living at home and acting like toddlers. They just hadn't learned. So it's one of those things where you go down and you're like, well, we have to, how do we get a lot of experience under your belts, because nothing had been moving. The problem is the earth at that time had reached, especially in that location, it had gotten into a place of such stagnation that nothing was growing. Everything was dead. It was dying. It was falling apart. Like France was lost. It just wasn't going well at all. So when we went into this construct and pulled all of these strands of people's energy in, we established a rotation that was very rapid, with the hope that it would, because all of these strands are two-way, right? So my energy, whatever energy I have, is going to be transferred to whoever has given me their power. So we had hoped that, and I'm a big transmuter. All of us in the construct have the ability to transmute, dark to light, or accumulate the darkness too, if they wanted. And there were beings in the construct who wanted the darkness. So for the souls who gave us their power and chose the darkness, because you have to allow for free choice. It was about accelerating spiritual development, not taking away their choice. You're actually trying to give what I was trying to do anyway, is to get the people up and sovereign enough so that they can handle making their own decisions. That being the whole point. But to do that, kind of had to dive in and get everybody's hand and say, come on, we're going this way. And then get them all through the gateway. And that's basically where we are now. But we established this rotation so that when all of our energy was mixed into the soup and everybody was getting a kind of a hyper, it's like on a rapidly speeding, one of those moving sidewalks at the airport, where for every step that the individual takes, the little sleeper person, for everything that they do, they get, the moving sidewalk will take them 10 steps for every step that they take. We were trying to offer this kind of assistance. So if you show a leaning, and we are trying to have them make their own decision, whatever side you're allowing the balance of, like if you're leaning, but they're sleepers, they don't know anything. If you're leaning toward positive energy, by virtue of your choices, you're going to absorb more and more and more. And then we were trying to just divide the people by virtue of where they were leaning. So my point, we're trying to increase their empathy too, thinking we had this idea that, I don't know if this has worked at all, but we had this idea that by having a holding tank, this Merkaba, with all of us in there, you have this holding tank, and then it's very, very much like soup. Everything is collective. As soon as you bring your ingredients, and all of this stuff is swirling around, and it's just like soup, and everything is reflected and felt by everybody. So if I have a thought, it's known over there. If I have a feeling, that person feels it too. We were trying to really get as much of this stuff into the people who willingly joined. So the whole point in telling you this is that it's not like it's all Illuminati and all cabal and all bad all the time. There is an opposite side. And that hasn't been a peach of a job. We've been working very, very, very hard. We never stop working to steer the population also in a good direction, in a higher direction. So the choice is actually yours. So if you're somebody who is very interested in disclosure, but you're focusing on all the negative stuff all the time, you need to be extremely aware that what you're looking at is what you're feeding. So when you look at all you can look at the facts without being emotionally attached or invested in it. Because though I can tell you that the way they're going to lure you in, the way they will lure you is they will make it a very slippery slope. They're going to offer you the chance to be judgmental, which is very tempting, especially when you feel you're right. And maybe you are right. You might be right. But be careful where you put the majority of your weight. And really I do encourage people to think about it like a car. You can safely point your wheels over and look at evidence that is factually based and very dark. If you can observe that from a neutral, emotionally neutral place, then it's relatively safe to look at. The moment that you, and I'm not saying that there's not a place for for justifiable anger. Anger can have a place. All things can have a place. I'm just saying you can't dwell there all the time. If you do, you run a risk of not being able, you're just going to get trapped in it. That being the point, that there is a way out. And I wonder if I guess I'll go into it. I seem to be on a roll with this. Not what I expected to be talking about at all. And I would have probably tensed up a little bit if I'd known. There's been certain information that I just didn't want to talk about. Or I wanted to have more evidence or diagrams or something, because there is a lot of evidence. And I feel I have thought about this enough so that I think it should be presented a certain way. And I think it will at some point. But I feel like they want, I feel like, I can tell they're pressing me to come forward with this one little thing. So it's not little. Okay, so when a situation gets very, very dark and it seems like there's no way out, there is a way out. It's not going to be from any lateral move. So when they held me in the cell, the place where they took me out of the public trial, and they continued to, I was still on trial, but I was being held in solitary confinement and being tortured. Because, hello, you want to see Lucas? There he is. Hi. Now you're famous. That's Luke. Thanks. You came over because you know I'm upset. You're stinky. Whoever's farting, walk away. You're a smelly dog. Hi. Sorry. I got sidetracked by a dog who came over to fart. Okay, walk away now. Luke, go lay down. That's really ripe. God. I don't know what you ate. Oh, it was the garbage. Right. I do know what you ate in the garbage. Please walk away. Luke, go lay down. Okay, stay here. Never mind. I'm such a pushover. Okay. That was a tension breaker. So because I was in the energetic construct, it gave me increased properties of manifestation because I was attached to the energy of all of these beings. So where my attention went, the reason the Joan of Arc lifetime was so so many things came from it. Like you think, well, I understand that it's a temptation to think that, like, well, it happened. So it happened in the Middle Ages. Why is it? How could it still be so relevant now? And the reason was because we were messing around with collective consciousness. We put things into it. I'm telling you, it went into the ley lines of the earth. Not everything that happened there was a triumphant success. And I don't mean just that they burned me. I mean, it had ramifications for all of these people that we were connected to. And it went into the earth, it went into the ley lines, and it threw a lot very, very off balance. It didn't go the way we had hoped that it went. Some things were successful and other things were not successful. In order to get the population to take their power back, in order to correct some of these things, certain things must happen, and it must have, the population really needs to, what's the word? Take their power back, obviously, but they have to do it in such a way that it's mindful, because I'm not entirely sure how this is going to play out. It's very tempting to want a platitude or a reassurance. And ultimately, if you do want a reassurance, you can say, well, ultimately, nothing ever dies. No matter how bad it goes, you can always recover. In theory, that's true. But I blew up a planet one time, and that was who knows how long ago. We didn't really have years. We're still trying to recover from that. The Joan of Arc lifetime was 600 years ago. All lifetimes are concurrent. It is possible to, Oprah says there are no mistakes, but certain things you wish you could learn an easier way. Not all journeys have to be rocky as hell either. It's possible to there are more preferable ways to learn. You could make the argument that there's no such thing as a mistake because everything will teach you. Sure, everything will teach you. But it's also possible some routes are preferable to others. Please don't bother me right now. Go over there. Go over there. That's the other one. Yeah, I know. You're here. I see you. Hi. Hi. Go lay down. Tosh, go lay down. This is why I usually put you in the bedroom for live streams. Otherwise, can there be 2 feet? Can there be 2 feet between us? How's that? Just a little bit of space. Hi. Hang on. They sense the energy has changed too. That's why both dogs came over. There is a way to point yourself or to manage your own energy. Go lay down. And the choice is basically going to be up to you. So you're going to have to know how to drive your own car. So information is going to come out. The reason that the Joan of Arc lifetime was so pivotal, and the reason it's still so relevant is because certain things happened in that lifetime. That whole lifetime was designed to motivate people and educate them and get them uplifted so that something was running and churning, so that their choices were amplified, so they could take their own power. But you have to start with by meeting your population where they are. If we just went in with a very high vibrational frequency, we would be out of the bandwidth of the population. They wouldn't even be able to see us. So the body of information that I have not even touched on really has to do with Disney. Wow. As soon as I mention it, I feel a pinch at my throat. And it's right on the left. It's on the left side too. So it's past and it's feminine, and it's very tight. As soon as I start to talk about this subject, it gets very, very tight. Cancel. The way to get out of any situation when something is so incredibly dark and there is no way out, and you know it. You know that the church is not going to help you. You know that the government's not going to help you. You know that your family cannot reach you. You know that you're really surrounded only by enemies, and they've got you chained to a log, or they're about to set you on fire, or they're poisoning you before they set you on fire, whatever. And nobody is coming. But you also know that you are connected to millions of people who are going to have the same experience that you have. And you're still responsible. A lot of people will disagree with me and say, oh, no, you're not responsible. That's an illusion. That's not true. When you're in the third dimension, you have the experience of being responsible for just yourself, but that is relegated to the third dimension. In higher dimensions, we are all responsible for one another. And if you allow yourself, if I was just in a particular position where I knew what my job was, and it was to help free the people, and there was a certain thing that had to be accomplished, and I knew that I was attached to millions of people, and I knew that they were my children, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. When I was imprisoned, also, so the energetic construct, because I was in there, I was in one body, but I was also energetically connected to this energetic construct, which had the creative ability of all of the ETs that were in it, as well as all of the collected energy of the masses. People who, a lot of people gave Joan of Arc their power when the whole goal was for them to take their power back, and that's not what happened. A lot of the time they gave, when we knew that was going to happen with a certain number of them, but it was more than is comfortable. The energy just got way bigger than we thought it was going to be. It got much more entrenched and locked in, like the darkness, those who went toward the darkness, it really, it created further density in that one location, incredibly difficult to get. It was already really dark, and really compressed. And when it was kind of like if you already have the extremes of polarity, but then you put it on centrifugal force, and it just gets more and more and more entrenched in both directions. Like it went high, the light energy got higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, and more entrenched also. Both sides really got, I don't even have a word for it. Extreme, extreme, extreme. And even that extreme of light, where all the choice is taken away, it becomes incredibly inflexible and distant from one another. It just really created, it created its own nightmare in a lot of ways. But there was a tremendous amount of creative potential. Potential is the wrong word. The creative ability that comes from that amount of emotion. If you think about manifestation as being what happens when you combine mental focus with strong emotion. So I knew that, knowing the dynamics of that there was a tremendous amount at stake during that lifetime that went way, 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 way beyond me. Had nothing to do with me, really. It has to do with setting an energetic precedent that, like, where you're leading people matters, and you can't lead them into darkness. So my point is that it is an incredibly difficult thing to get out of when you're trapped in a cell. Smells like urine. There's straw on the floor. They're not going to let you out. Everyone's threatening to rape you. You're physically in pain. They have no intention of ever letting you go. But you know that, and you can't find your voices anymore. And nobody is coming. Unless it's to walk by you and make matters worse. It's very difficult. A difficult position to be in when you're alone. But knowing that you have the additional weight of the responsibility for all of those people who are going to go where your mind goes. And you don't have the luxury of despair. You don't have the luxury of a negative thought, because that's real. You know that that's going to create a trajectory, and all of these people are going to follow you, because they do. One of the things that happened, not right now. Not right now. I'm just about to break some news, so I would rather you be in the other room for this part. One moment, please. Please hurry up.
We're on.
I'm live, and I'm waiting for you to go in the room. No, I'm live right now. So one of the things that happened is that when they had isolated me in a cell, and I knew that where I put my mind was going to establish the trajectory of my people being the French, but also all of those that were connected to me energetically. We've been doing this for a really long time. And it was incredibly important to maintain the mental direction. Keep that in my mind, so that no matter what they did, that aim was true. That's why they put me at, when I was talking about the ascension arc, that I was the captain, but I'm also the figurehead, that they put me in navigation. My specialty skill set has been interdimensional harmonics, but also navigation. I'm the one who remembers everything first, and I know where we're headed. And it's my job in the construct to get us all out, because none of us are leaving until we all get out. Or people take their power back and decide that they're not coming. That can happen. but they have to make an actual choice to say, no, I don't want to go up. I've decided to go in this direction. And then they can take their freedom. But we had made the commitment that while we were in 3, we were going to go down and maintain the construct. That's why at least one of us has been incarnate on the planet since the Joan of Arc lifetime, because that had to be anchored in a body the entire time. At least one of us has been incarnated on the planet at any given time since the Joan of Arc lifetime. So the point that I have been skipping is that something happened when I was alone in the cell and just left there to rot until they burned me. Knowing that the mental focus was so essential. I was talking to Sarah Adams about this yesterday. You try to find anything in a field of darkness when it gets that dark. You try to find anything, any point of light, anything that you can latch onto to focus on, a focal point. Focus on love, focus on what you love, focus on what you love. Feel anything that will inspire love within you, no matter how small. Focus on it and don't let up. Just become hyper vigilant and just focus on that and feel it. Put all of your feeling into that. Focus on what you love, focus on what you love, focus on what you love. And when I was in isolation and being tortured, there was nothing. The gnats didn't talk. I was isolated for months. And hearing is by far my, one of my better senses. I'm very, very clairaudient. And I focused on the mice. I focused very, very hard on the mice. Yeah. That wound up because there were just gnats and mice. There were not that many mice, but there were a couple of mice, and I focused on them all the time. They were the only kind thing that came to see me. And I just was living for my interaction with them because I couldn't hear my guides. And I was just focusing on that all the time. And because of the energetic construct, anybody's thoughts and emotions are a powerful vehicle. And it's always going to give you the manifesting power. But particularly because of the construct that I was in, and the energy that it held, mine was particularly potent. And it wound up. And also, it was all about inspiring the people to take their power back. The whole energetic platform was, how do we get the people uplifted? How do we inspire them? How do we get them to take their own creative power back? How do we get them to fight for themselves? Fighting being the wrong word, but just become sovereign. How do we get them happier? And it's my energy stream that was the divine child. I carried the child jurisdiction. They were my people. So what it wound up doing when I focused on the mice, it created, I don't know why I'm crying because it's essentially a happy thing. All of these things create energy rivers in space. In higher dimensions, every force evolves into a form or a circumstance. Nothing gets created in 3. It might appear that way, but that's because 3 is deceptive. But really what happens is when you feel something strongly and you hold it in your mind, you create things in the higher dimensions, and with enough power, these waves become very, very powerful. So we had millions of people, and the intention, like once you can access these forces at that scale, there are energetic rivers in space that will come to Earth, and they will go into the minds of those who are open. We call that inspiration. Artists, composers, writers, no matter what you are, if you are in a creative field, you're opening your mind. You may think that the idea came from you, but really it's one of these rivers that you are pulling through you, and you feel inspiration, and you feel an idea, you connect with an idea, and very often other people on the planet have the same idea at very roughly the same, basically the same time. And that's because it didn't actually come to them. It came from above, and it kind of drops into your head. But there are levels of creation that you wind up learning how to create with more and more and more energy. So by the time you get a job, or you're enlisted to service, put it that way, you're enlisted into service with a group of other beings who are also strong creators, and you're in an energetic construct, and then in the course of events, they capture you and torture you. What you think about is very important. So I was focusing on mice and love of mice and talking with mice, and I wound up basically as this hidden princess, Joan of Arc, divine child, misunderstood at court, child warrior, trying to get the sexes equalized. I wound up creating an energetic stream in space that Walt Disney pulled from. So Walt Disney, when he started with Mickey Mouse, he said it all started with a mouse. He's giving you a bit of disclosure too. It did all start with a mouse. It all started when I focused on a mouse in a cell. There has been an ongoing intent by light forces to get this information to the people, to get the people lifted, to tell them exactly what they had to do to get out, to get them to go into prison, to tell them exactly and show them exactly what you do to get out of prison. Somebody has to do it first, because you don't have the right. It's a universal law. You do not have the right to require that others do something that you yourself have not done or cannot do. You don't have that right. If you're going to insist that somebody else do something, you at least have to be able to show that, number one, it can be done. You have to have lived through it yourself. You can't inflict something on someone else. So you need somebody to go down first to live through the thing and show the people how to get out. You set an energetic precedent. It's like digging a groove, that it's like establishing a waterbed by taking a stick and drawing a line and then pouring water. You know that it's going to go down a channel, but you have to establish the channel first. You're going to go and establish the direction. So you have to go into these situations so that at least one person can help you get out. So the first thing that you have to get out, the strongest barrier, the strongest challenge far and away has been the belief barrier. The belief barrier for humanity has been by just far and away the most difficult wall to break, because they keep recreating as as they see things. They've been conditioned to, when they see something, they think of it a certain way, or they have been, oh boy, this is a big pet peeve of mine. They've been conditioned to ignore certain things in preference to others. If you see a flash of light, that wasn't a fairy, it was just a flash of light. We're going to think you're stupid if you say it was a fairy. So gradually you're conditioned that you don't see fairies anymore, but you saw them when you were children. Children are born right. They're born correct. They're born with the ability. They have full telepathic ability when they're born. They're conditioned out of it. The idea has been, I don't want you to think you've been abandoned. I don't want you to think that the cabal is stronger than you. Cabal's not stronger than you. Dark forces are not stronger than the light forces. You've been conditioned to look for them, though. You've been conditioned to look for where the darkness is, to find out where they're deceiving us, so that you can feel smug that you just, that you discovered whatever. Which it is important. Is it important to know that the church was also doing dark things? Yeah. And it does, in the whole Disney empire, is there also MK Ultra? Yeah. There's equal amounts of dark and light. So your choice is what are you going to do with it? That's really the thing about it. I'm never going to tell you that the dark doesn't exist. I've personally experienced that, and it's been as dark as it gets in this lifetime, in other lifetimes. But is that going to get you out of it? No. If you focus on that too much. Do you have to grieve? Yes. Do you have to purge? Yes. You have to get all that crap out. But then if the only thing, there comes a point, and we're basically at this pivot point now, where we've done, or at least a swath of us, a good level of us, have gone through the purging process. Are there people who are still asleep? Yeah. Are there people who are just waking up and haven't even started their purging process? Yeah. They're going to need some help because a lot of us have done it already. And it's going to be our job to help them in their process, which means we're all going to have to step up to our next highest level of service. And so as the dark disclosure is further disclosed, I'm going to be talking more and more about Disney because there is has been, oh my God, such a war for the consciousness. It's all war for consciousness. Who gets what? So most people, it's very interesting to me that as the disclosure has been coming out, I do understand why it happens. Dark disclosure is coming out first because we need to purge, and we have to do a collective purge before the collection of people, mass consciousness, is pure enough that we can reach a higher tipping point. So all of that dark stuff has to come out, but that's not where we're meant to stay. And if we keep focusing on it, which we've been conditioned to do, we're going to run the risk. There's a very high potential that we're going to just recreate things the way they have been. We're going to just kind of create an enemy. And we can't be creating an enemy if we want to live in peace and happiness. We have to incorporate or understand the darkness and hold it, create a place where if we can transmute it, or the dark that really wants to stay dark, which it may do, it does have that option. It has a place where it can go. And we have a place where we're going too, but we have to make sure that we're not going to recreate the same situation that we've had. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the science of creation, creating things from an energetic platform. And we're going to be talking a lot in the future about, we're going to be using the Disney movie model and talking about disclosure. We've been disclosing information about the Joan of Arc lifetime and the significance of that, that pivotal story from Snow White and on. I mean, just from the very beginning, the Disney Empire all started with a mouse. And the truth is, it actually started with the Joan of Arc lifetime, intending to get all of the children out of prison. Because the children were in prison. My children have been in prison. And you don't get out of it by focusing on the pain and focusing on chains. You don't do it. You focus on the love, no matter how small it is. You focus on conversing with animals. You focus on connection. You focus on the love, and you keep doing it over and over and over and over until it's the only thing you do. You have to make it a pattern that is so immediate, so automatic, that you're automatically looking for the good thing all the time. Do you know enemies exist? Yes. But where you point your mind matters. That's how we're going to get out. And if you don't know anything about the Joan of Arc story, if you're following this information, it's going to be worth it to you to either read one of the books, read a good one like Mark Twain's, or watch, I recommend The Messenger. At the time of the fire, I don't want to talk a lot about this, but I do want to talk about what Joan of Arc did, incidentally, the actual fire, that is one of the only portions of that lifetime that I don't have a personal memory of. I remember being led up to it. I remember standing in a group of people right before. I mean, shaved and in bare feet. And I remember that part because up until that point, I still really thought that somebody was coming. I just really believed that angels would come, or the prince would come, or somebody was coming, somebody would come. And there was a point where I suddenly realized nobody's coming. After all of this, nobody is coming. In the fire, the importance of mental focus and what was at stake, no pun intended, it wasn't me. It's not a person. It's not an individual. It's the energy attached to that individual and what the symbolism. And again, it's all for collective consciousness. The amount of collective energy, the forces that combined. The war is really all for energy. And the reason they wanted me burned, number one, there are a couple of things about burning. When you have that much anger in a field, in a combined field, there was a tremendous amount of anger. And I was connected to all of the children. I carried the child population. So the war was also for, and the virginity of Joan of Arc had to do with getting the energy of all of the children into a position in church, within the church structure. We went in with this intention, by the way. And I know I've complained about Joan of Arc's virginity, but there's a reason also that we installed it that way. And that's because children are being raped in the church. So one of the intentions of my portion of the energy stream was to come in with virgin energy that was so incredibly strong that no matter how much the English intended to be victorious by rape, it was such a constant threat. It was our intention to come down as a column that would pick up all of the energy of tortured children, hold on to the energy of tortured children, and impart, because the energy runs two directions, right? It was the intention to plant a powerful seed, an energetic seed within the child population in the church, of which Joan of Arc was the perfect emblem. The tortured divine child. I never got my period in that lifetime either. Because when you get your period, when you go through puberty, you go through a vibrational change. And it was very important that that not happen to me, because I had to be a vibrational match to children. So I never got my period in that lifetime. The intention was to carry a vibration in that would be so unfucked with, something that would be so authentic, where there was such an energetic protection over the whole virgin idea that something has come in and it is absolutely the way it was intended. It is not marred. It is not fucked with at all. We were reasserting the divine child template of the child warrior who is not to be messed with. We couldn't get it all done, but we planted a seed. It was divine intervention to go down. And you meet the population where they are by going down as a tortured child and showing the way out. I was not raped in that lifetime. They did burn me, but there was something that happened in the process. You need to think of it rather than as burning a human, a person. That is less the important part. And try and understand what was happening to the energy streams when you burn somebody who's carrying that kind of energy. I know that at the time of the fire, I did receive, and I was always receiving a tremendous amount of protection, but there was a indescribable amount of angelic help. I know that I left my body, but the mental focus remained. Joan of Arc, when she was being burned, knew what she was there to do. I'm referring to that in the third person because it was me, but more of us. My job was laser-like focus. Basically, it's just navigation. How do you get out? If they've got you in a situation where are they going to torture you and kill you? Yes. It's not even up for debate. So my job, because what they're trying to do is get loose, right? The dark side is going to try to harvest as much of the tortured child energy as possible. And when they burned Joan of Arc, they were going to get a jackpot like nothing else because of all of the conflict energy, just the amount of energy that was charged in a specific form. Particularly with fire. I understand that it couldn't really have taken any other form but fire because of the sheer amount of anger. If there hadn't been that much anger, it could have been death by some other means. But honestly, just the sheer amount of rage can only, every force evolves a form. So if you have a tremendous amount of anger, it comes down as inflammation. It always does. Inflammation and heat. If you've studied, messages from the body and what every ailment means and what it means when something happens to a certain part of your body. And, when you get congested, it's emotions, trapped emotions. But anger presents as inflammation and heat. I'm almost done. So, Joan of Arc, when I will be ending this very shortly. When Joan of Arc was in the fire, the dark forces, what they're trying to do is get as much loose, as much dark energy as possible, especially from the child energy stream. They're trying to harvest that and harness it. The light side doesn't want them to have it. We came to rescue the children. We came to rescue the populace and lift them out of that. So Joan of Arc, when she was being burned, when I was being burned, if you have read descriptions of that, she asked for a cross to be held up so she could see it the whole time. And what she said was, Jesus, 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 Jesus. The same way you focus on a mouse, you focus on something that you love with all your heart and soul, and it's a fight for this energy stream, because when you burn anything, it's extremely intense energy. That's why we light candles. Fire magic, you do spells, you light candles, because it provides a certain quality, an intensity of purpose that's transformative. So if you are going in and being burned, you can take that energy stream and point it in the direction of your choosing by focusing where, like, basically, don't let them have it. Don't let it go to dark. Don't let it go to dark. So this is something now that I'm giving to you, because are they going to likely put you in a very uncomfortable situation? Yes. Your challenge is going to be to not let it go to dark. Does it mean you're not uncomfortable? No. Your challenge, and it is a master's challenge, the challenge is to find something that you love, focus on it, and take active steps moving in that direction. It is going to require action on your part, too, to the best of your ability. If you're actually chained and you can't get it, then the only thing you can do is to focus. Then do that. But the way out is going to be your imagination. If you can't do anything else, you can create something. You can learn to create something in energetic form and draw it to you. There is always an escape. So if the lateral move is never going to provide you with anything, if you're actually trapped in the third dimension and you know that it's a trap, the only way out is up. I guarantee it. If there's no lateral move available to you, and really the third dimension is only lateral moves, you're going to have to go up in dimension which requires a new skill set. And one of the things it's going to require you to do is get your powers of visualization, imagination back. You need them back. Your crown chakra needs to be opened. So we're going to talk, then I think the next time, we're going to talk a lot about the importance of imagination and why a lot of times we've been conditioned out of it. But the whole idea of needing to see something before you believe it is backwards. It's quite backwards. What's actually going to happen is going to have to happen is that your powers of imagination are going to have to come back before you learn how to bring something into a physical form. And then you can see it once you believe it. But you're going to have to restore your crown chakra and restore your willingness to believe in something that you can't necessarily see yet. We are going to definitely talk a little bit more about that. I would keep going, except my daughter's cranky. So I'm going to let her go to bed. The next time I don't know when the next one is. But I do think that we're going to start talking about um, powers of imagination, how we have worked with through Disney from the very beginning. You know, Snow White. We have been doing disclosure the entire time. If you watch all the Disney princess movies all the way through, we were getting girls to be warriors. We were getting girls to be leaders. I really have a lot to say about that. We were installing visions in the population. Also, there was a lot of disclosure. You know, Snow White, Joan of Arc was pure and chaste, and they had the Wicked Queen. Um, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is also very largely a Joan of Arc story, even though she was a total pansy. Um, the puniest of all princesses, but she was the one who was basically who sang "Someday My Prince Will Come." She was waiting for that prince the same way I was also in a cell waiting for my prince, who was supposed to pay my ransom. That was a real story. I'll do all of this for you, and once you're safely on the throne, my payback is that I'm tossed in the dirt, you know, and none of the rules apply to me, and I'm not allowed to have anything. And apparently he thought that was fine. Um, but I really had every last confidence in him at the time. I did. I really, really believed that he would come. I really believed it. And not everybody is our friend. It was a hard lesson in discernment. Not everybody does develop empathy, but that was our hope. Our hope was that in joining the energetic construct, that we would make it go so much faster that everybody would have the experience of other people, and so their spiritual maturity would be accelerated. And I'll talk more about that story a different day. Anyway, I love you all extra. And this was a teary one. I didn't expect this. I thought it was going to be happier. Next time, I hope. Next time, I hope it's going to be happier. Anyway, I love you. I'll see you next time.